Welcome to the World on Fire with myself, Dr. Brian Remy Cross of Silvertree Consultants. So, when I started this series and named it, I certainly did not expect the title to become prophetic in the way that it has. So, join me now as we talk about what you can do for this world on fire to maybe push back the flames a little bit. Specifically, last time I talked about getting involved in activism. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about what to wear and how to prepare for protest activity if you are going out to a public demonstration or a march or a rally of some sort. So let's get into it. Want to talk a little bit about that because protests are starting to ramp up. I would advise everyone to be careful and alert, but also to be present if you can. One of the things we are likely going to see moving forward are attempts to disrupt and be much more punitive towards protesters. We've seen indications of this from the Trump administration in the past, which has generally been hostile towards First Amendment assembly protections. And there's no reason to believe that that would not continue to be the case. So be careful, but do show up. Don't let them discourage you by making it seem riskier than it is. Also, you're going to see attempts to disrupt solidarity, to basically get people to break down along tribal lines and argue that white people don't need to support non-white people, that cis people don't need to support non-cis and trans folks, that LGBTQ individuals have no interest in supporting people who are dealing with documentation and immigration issues. That basically people like me, or who look like me, should not care about what's going on because it does not immediately impact us the way it does other people. This is bad and wrong. And if you care about other people, you should care about all the other people, not just the ones that look just like you. So, going to your first protest or going to your first protest in a long time, let's talk first about what to wear. Comfortable clothing. Dress for the season. If it's going to be cold, wear something that you're going to be comfortable in the cold. If it's going to be hot, again, wear something that's comfortable there. The one caveat I would put here is that you probably still want to wear something that is going to cover your arms and your legs, especially if you have tattoos or other identifiable marks. You want to do what you can, and this is going to be sort of the theme for a lot of the dresses. You don't want to be easily spotted and identified. There are almost certainly going to be counter protesters at these events that are going to try to dox people. And there's also state agents, police, federal agents who have a vested interest in trying to figure out who is there and in what capacity. So the harder you can make their job, the better. In addition to comfortable clothing, if we start from the top and go down, a head covering. This doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't necessarily have to be protective in the sense that it's a hard helmet. It can be, but the most important thing here is to keep the sun off your head, keep you from getting sunburn or sunstroke. Again, you want to go with something nondescript, just a plain baseball cap or a bike helmet, something that will cover your dome. Moving down, eye covering. You're going to want glasses, sunglasses, all the way up to goggles if you are the sort who are afraid of getting tear gassed. But something to protect your eyes, just in case. It's not like your eyes are likely to be targeted, but, better safe than sorry. A mask of some sort. We are still dealing with, even though COVID is over, there's still plenty of other things that are transmissible. If you're in a large crowd, some percentage of those people may be sick, and doing what you can to avoid it is good. Also, again, helps cover up your features. And some of the more robust masking options may give you a little bit more defense against crowd control agents like tear gas or pepper spray. Moving down, I often suggest, and I wear gloves to these things, or I bring gloves. I don't always wear them, but any additional hand protection is good. There's going to be potentially things that could harm your hands, hard, just anything that's going to give you that little extra bit to keep you safe. And then finally, some form of shoe that is closed-toed, that is going to allow you to run in it if you need. So comfortable shoes, and ones that you're comfortable standing in for extended periods of time, because that's mostly what protest demonstrations are, or standing around and listening to somebody and then walking or marching to a place and then standing around and listening to somebody some more. Um, if you do have mobility issues, make sure that you are accounting for that, and make sure that any march or demonstration you're planning to go to is accessible, both getting in and getting out. And again, I would have somebody, I always am going to be in favor of going with at least one other person who can provide you assistance and backup if needed. So that's kind of what to wear. Um, what to bring with you: a small backpack. Doesn't need to be like a big camping one. It just needs to fit the following items: government issued ID if you have it. Water. I prefer smaller plastic bottles. I know they're not great for the environment, but they are easier to hand off to somebody. And if you lose them or you have to leave them behind, it's not a huge loss. Quick snacks, especially things like protein bars that are going to give you a burst of energy, protein, calories, not just for you, but for other people who may not have been as well prepared. A cell phone with a charger, extended battery pack if you have it. Just do be aware that cell phones may stop working during some protests. There are technologies that allow authorities to shut down or monitor the cell network. Any communications on your cell phone should be encrypted. I've talked about it before. Signal is great for this. There's other ones out there. Just make sure whoever you're communicating with is on the same page with you. Do not do open communications. No Facebook, no Bluesky, no Xsitter, whatever we're calling it now. Next, wet wipes. Just, to clean, to handle any spills, those sorts of things. And then finally, a simple first aid kit. And I do mean simple here. If I'm not going as a medic, I still bring a first aid kit, but it just has Neosporin, a couple of different types of bandages, some sterile gauze, a little bit of tape, and antiseptic wipes, right? You don't need anything. You don't need an IFAC. You don't need anything that's that dedicated. Leave that to the people who are trained street medics. So that's what to bring with you. In terms of what to avoid, don't bring weapons. Dear God, don't bring weapons. If you are not sure if something qualifies as a weapon, check your local ordinance. Try not to wear bright or distinctive clothing and colors. Again, you do not necessarily want to be standing out here unless that is sort of your aim. But it is generally, especially if you're a neophyte to doing these things, you generally want to blend with the crowd. Don't eat too much beforehand, especially if you know that you're going to have to move around or run. You don't want to be weighed down with all of that. Avoid random strangers who are inviting you to engage in illegal or violent activity. Hey, maybe they're on the up and up, but you know what? You don't know them. You don't know that they could be an undercover cop. They could be a counter-protester who is trying to provoke violence or illegality for the purposes of filming and kind of creating a narrative that makes a protest look bad. If you don't know the person and they're suggesting, hey, we should do violence, don't. Just get away from that person, because that person is bad news by and large. Also, avoid places where there have been deployment of crowd control chemical agents, those sorts of things. Pepper spray and tear gas both will linger in an area and can be effective, especially if there's not a breeze or anything to really move them along. So try to avoid areas where you know that those have been deployed. Finally, just some general advice. Again, I mentioned it's always good to go with somebody. Even if you don't, let somebody who is not going know that you are attending a protest, and let them know that you will check in, that you have returned safely at a certain set time. do not film your fellow protesters, right? We don't need to dox each other. Um, and this is advice that you've probably seen elsewhere, but you generally want to have a Sharpie, write the phone number in big letters, and I'm talking like, 3-4 inch high lettering on your forearm. Again, Sharpie or something else that isn't going to wash off easily or smear if you're sweating. And this is for a lawyer or somebody else who can bail you out if you do get arrested. And you want those numbers big and prominent so that you can see it if you have been tear gassed, or somebody else can identify it easily if you're unable to see it yourself. I do advise and have advised in the past people to just review any state or local ordinances that might affect large gatherings or protest activity. Since COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, we have seen a lot of jurisdictions passing laws that further restrict what is and is not allowed at protests. And these are often done just as a way of justifying breaking up protests or mass arrests. So be aware of the things that might get it ended. I already talked about bringing a cell phone and a charger, but again, make sure that it is locked. You do not have to open a locked phone, but if it is open, law enforcement can look through it. I would also advise against parking too close. Oftentimes, counter-protesters will try to follow protesters back to their cars with the purpose of trying to dox them or get their license plate number. And the further away you park, the more likely you are to spot people who are trying to follow you. Finally, obey lawful orders to disperse. This is early days, and people getting arrested because they're just not listening is not going to help anybody. It is better for you to be present at multiple events rather than get arrested at your first. So, my final bit of advice is to maintain situational awareness. As a general rule, you want to be aware of whether there are the potential for chemical agents or other crowd dispersal agents to be deployed. This includes rubber bullets, sonic devices like LRADs. You just want to have an idea. Usually you're going to be keeping an eye on the riot cops, and when they start getting jumpy and agitated, that's often a indicator that things are about to get real chemical. Also, try to keep sight on your nearest street medic, and if there are legal observers. Street medics are there to provide emergency medical aid to anyone who needs it. It might not be you, it might be somebody else, but if you do see somebody in distress, knowing where the nearest street medic is often helpful. Legal observers, who often come from the National Lawyers Guild, are people that are there to monitor protest activity and record any potential violations of rights or laws. Finally, always be aware of your nearest escape route. Things can change rapidly, and one of the more prominent techniques that you often see riot cops using are kettling, where they attempt to contain and push in protesters into a smaller and smaller space. You do not want to get caught up in a kettle. So be aware of where your nearest escape route is. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you do have questions for me, you can contact me there at BRCross@silvertreeconsultancy.net. You also can see my socials down below the picture there. There's the website and my Bluesky. I am no longer monitoring the Twitter, so sorry. And finally, be safe out there and make a difference. Until next time, this is Dr. B.R. Cross.